Hey guys, welcome to BP, the Bible Perspective, deconstructing Larry Elder's magic arguments. Now, before we get into it, please like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. You know, a good magician is skilled in his craft to perform what we often call illusions or magic tricks. Now, the reality is, we all know there's no such thing as magic. But it is a wonder to watch how these magicians perform. Now, one of the ways that they perform is to get you focusing on something, right? They call it a sleight of hand. They get you to focus on something so that you're not looking at something else. More so the reality of what they're doing. So for example, if they tell you, hey, I'm gonna pick a card. I'm gonna pick a card that you pick. I'm gonna tell you the card that you pick. So here, shuffle the deck, and then he'll have you pull a card. And when you pull the card, he'll have you look at the card. And then he'll have you put the card back into the deck. And then he'll shuffle. And then he'll come out and go, this is the card you chose. It's the card you picked. And we go, oh my God, how did he do that? Well, he did that by having you focus on something, but what you didn't see is how he marked the card. Maybe held it with his thumb or something, okay? This is what Larry does in terms of his arguments. He has crafted his arguments where by now he recites them by instinct. And one of the ways that he is skilled in doing is he'll shoot up a lot of facts at you at one time, so you don't have time enough to really digest or to think about the information that he's given you. In other words, he's having you focus on one thing without focusing on the other. Another thing is he's a master at shifting, deflecting. We're going to see that. I'm gonna show you how he's able to. You ask one question, he talks about something totally unrelated. But I'm also going to show you that by doing that, he also shifts the attention that he's actually agreeing with, or he is admitting the wrong. So I'm going to deconstruct an interview he did on a news show a couple of months ago. He's running for president. He has a snowball chance in hell to win. But he's going to make his argument, okay? And he's going to make his argument from a typical Republican conservative platform, using typical conservative Republican talking points. And as I said, he's so skilled at using them, he spits it out with instinct. So let's get into it. Let's pull him up here. This is the news show. All right, here we go.
Well, Larry, let's start with what we just talked about with the Trump indictment. You have aligned yourself with him throughout the last several years, of course, as a gubernatorial candidate, but now as a GOP hopeful, potentially running against him, so to speak, for the nominee. What are your thoughts about what we're seeing, yet another kind of political sideshow when it comes to the former president?
Well, I'm not saying that the charges aren't serious. They are serious.
Now, I want you to hear what he just said. The charges are serious, okay? So understand that. The charges are serious. So, okay.
Yes. But it's hard for me not to feel this is another example of a two-tier justice system. He's accused, I think the most serious charge is violating the Espionage Act by having these documents that pertain to national security. But for crying out loud, Hillary had an unsecured server in her basement on which she sent and received classified information, lied about it. Then there were some 33,000 emails that were under subpoena. They were destroyed. No charges. James Comey does this big presentation where you think he's going to say, my goodness, he's going to charge her. At the very end, he says, but she lacked the intent to violate the act. Well, the specific part of the act that she's alleged to have violated did not require intent. And so he skated. And then you fast forward to 2020, and a majority of Democrats believe that she should be investigated for paying for a Steele dossier, the DNC and she paying for the dossier that triggered this whole 2.5-year collusion investigation. And she paid the money and put down it was a legal expense, which is exactly what Donald Trump said regarding the payment made to Stormy Daniels, legal expense. But she was fined by the FEC, and he's facing criminal charges at the state level. It's completely, totally unfair.
Okay, so let's take a look, unpack what he said. She asked about the indictment of Trump. He then deflects to Hillary Clinton, which has absolutely nothing to do with anything in terms of his presidency. He's running to be the president. So mentioning Hillary Clinton has absolutely nothing to do with that. If he's president, he would have nothing to do with how he governs. But he shifts away from the most serious charge of Trump being indicted. Secondly, even though he kind of gives a broad brush of saying, well, they're serious. Well, what does that mean, they're serious? Anytime you're charged, it's serious. But how serious is it? Now, he says it's a two-tier justice system. Well, this is a new kind of a talking point that conservatives are now using, and Republicans. Two-tier. And they only use this because now Trump is indicted. Not because he did something wrong or not, but because he was simply indicted. Now, why are the Republicans supporting a person who is indicted? And without, of course, unpacking the case, I'm not qualified to unpack the case. Neither is Larry. But all of the and so what's going on with Trump, of course, is going to play out in a courtroom. So why is he bringing up Hillary? What did that have to do with anything in terms of Hillary? Now, that's a sleight of hand. See, he wants you to focus on Hillary so that you won't focus on the seriousness and the immorality of Trump and his indictment. Now, he said a couple of things about Hillary. One, he says that she paid a fine and she had all of these emails. Well, my response to that is this. Why didn't Trump indict her during his 4 years of when he was in president? 2 of those years he had control of both houses. Eventually he had control of the DOJ through William Barr. So why didn't he instruct Barr to bring charges against Hillary? See, in other words, under the Republican presidency that he's running on a Republican platform, why didn't Trump indict or bring charges against Hillary? Now, I really don't care because in reality, as I said, Hillary has absolutely nothing to do with this presidency, how he's going to govern. He also said that the majority of Democrats, agreed that Hillary should be investigated or in charge or whatever. But he also left out something that's important to that. They also said it wouldn't have mattered in terms of their vote in 2016. In other words, they still would have supported Hillary, which kind of shows you that politics is politics no matter which side you're on. Just like people who support Trump no matter what, a lot of people would have supported Hillary no matter what. All right, so let's continue.
Keep going on. There's been no investigation about how 51 former intel officers signed that letter claiming the Hunter Biden laptop story had all the classic earmarks of a Russian disinformation campaign. Why is there no investigation about that? And we know that Joe Biden has had documents in 4 or 5 different places. The excuse is, well, when the Biden was notified about all this, he voluntarily turned them over. Well, some of those documents came from a SCIF, a private section where you walk in with a promise not to take out any documents, not to take out any recordings, and this is when he was a senator. He had no ability to declassify anything. So it just strikes me, Hunter, as another example of a two-tier justice system. Now, I want it all to...
Okay, again, what does Biden have to do with this? What is Hunter? He's getting ready to go into a whole long spiel about Hunter Biden. The Democrats have been going on about Hunter Biden. Okay, and if Hunter's guilty, fine. But again, what does Hunter have to do with anything? But going back to Trump, he said, why wasn't there any investigations? Good question. Let's start with asking Trump. Here we go.
Play out. Let's find out what happens legally. But for crying out loud, it does not look fair to me.
That seems like the big difference is they're saying that when Mike Pence had the documents and he found out about them, he turned them in.
Right.
When Hillary had them, turned them in. When Biden had them, turned them in. When Trump has them, he hides them and he tries to secretly secure them. And he's kind of playing a little bit of this shell game.
All of which
So this news guy kind of he kind of throws it back at Larry. Watch how Larry deflects. But that's a good point. This issue with, and we kind of find out that politicians seem to just do these kind of wrong things, like, take documents that they shouldn't. Well, look at how many people, when it was discovered that Trump had taken secret documents, then we come to find out, just across the board, this is almost like a standard practice with politicians. Even Mike Pence, Mr. Boy Scout himself, took documents he wasn't supposed to. So, in my opinion, Biden probably was one of the worst offenders, because he had documents going back to when he was in the Senate, which was decades ago. But the difference is that when they said give them back, everybody gave the documents back except Trump. And that became the issue. And this is what Larry is deflecting from. So when he talks about a two-tier system, wait a minute, the two-tier system was, ask your guy, why didn't he give the documents back?
does make a difference. But Logan, again, going back to the SCIF part, SCIF stands for, forget, secured, confidential area where the senators go and look at documents. They can't take anything in, they can't take anything out, they can't even write anything down. How do you inadvertently take out documents out of the SCIF and go, oh my God, I didn't realize I had these? How do you do that?
How do you inadvertently keep documents when you know they're not your documents, or that you know that they're classified documents, and when you're asked, how do you inadvertently not give them back? Oh, I'm talking about Trump. See the sleight of hand here? Like I say, I'm expecting him to do his magic tricks, but he just does them with his tongue. Here we go.
How does it look when we're looking towards an important year for Republicans right now, when the focus is not necessarily on unifying a party behind a candidate, but instead having to answer questions? We've spent the first, 3 to 4 minutes of this interview having to talk about, another candidate and what's happening. Do you wish that it could just be about the election and the candidates and the best person to take on?
Well, Hunter, that is why I am running. If I thought Donald Trump was both nominatable and electable, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation. I think
that's a lie he just told. Trump is very much electable. He's very much nominable. He's creaming Larry. Larry's not even, I don't even know if he has double-digit support, right? I think he's still polling at around 1 to 2%. Secondly, Trump is far out polling all of his competitors. It's a landslide. It's laughable, So when he says that Trump, it's laughable when he says that Trump is not electable. Here's my point. And you are, Larry. He couldn't even make the debates because of his low polling. Now he's contesting that, he's complaining about that, but he is so far low in the polls. Again, this statement makes him laughable.
There are so many swing voters, particularly female swing voters in the suburbs, who would not vote for the man if he walked on water. In fact, if he did, they say he can't swim. Now, I have no idea what to do about Trump derangement syndrome. Maybe someday they'll develop a vaccine. But until then, we have an electability problem. I've asked voters to ask yourself the following questions. Have you lost friends because of Donald Trump? Are you walking on eggshells at work because of Donald Trump? Do you have strained relations with friends and family and relatives because of Donald Trump? If the answer is yes, Houston, we've got a problem. And I think
Well, you've been had a problem. However, it's not a problem with conservatives or Republicans. They support Trump. No matter how guilty he is, no matter how immoral he is, no matter how ungodly he is, they support him. The problem is you can't get his vote. You can't get his supporters.
I think at some point, Republican voters are going to realize they need to coalesce behind somebody whose last name is other than Trump so we can defeat Biden-Harris in November 2024.
Larry,
and I'm that person.
How do you align yourself then, saying maybe you're Trumpism without Trump? How do you align yourself without alienating, like you said, those suburban housewives and the ones that for the last 4 years have said anybody but just
Right.
because of the nonsense as you just outlined?
Well, I think Trump did a fantastic job as president on the borders, on taxes, on regulations, on judges, on being energy independent, and I'm going to continue those policies. But
Now that is interesting because, see, so that's a true statement that he's making. In other words, when he identifies what would be the good points of a Trump candidacy, but what he's also not saying is, why did Trump then lose in 2020? In other words, he's not talking about the 700,000 over the 700,000 plus American lives who died because of his decision on how he handled COVID. Okay, that's why he lost in 2020. So, and if he was such a good president, then why are you running against him? Why aren't you supporting him? Why do you think you're going to do better when you just said he did a better job? So so now you're saying he's going to continue the policies. Well, if you're going to continue his policies, why do we need you, Larry, when the man that you just esteem is already running and creaming you? He's just pummeling you in the polls, right? He's just stomping you. Okay, here we go.
again, I don't have the same kind of baggage that has turned off so many suburban voters, such that, unlike him, I can get elected in November 24th. That's why.
First of all, when he said suburban voters, what suburban voters are you talking about? Because the idea is that the people that turned away from Trump, they were supporters of Trump. Now, the point is that you're not getting those votes, and I'm not even convinced that even if you got the votes that you're claiming now, swing voters, it still wouldn't be enough to get you across the finish line.
That's why I'm doing this.
Talk about how you're going to stand out from the other candidates and how you can get elected. Where are you going to position yourself? What issues are you going to talk about?
Well, all the issues I mentioned a moment ago, plus a couple of things that I think the other candidates don't focus on. And that is the 10,000-pound elephant in the room is the epidemic of fatherlessness. There are four.
Now, I want to take this point by point. He just talked about fatherlessness. There's a couple of things that I want to address with that, because this is a talking point that people pick up on. So there's a couple of ways that this is framed. One, they say fatherlessness, and then mostly, notice what he's getting ready to do. Fatherlessness. Now, in another interview, he said the single social problem in America, worse than COVID, is fatherlessness. Now, this is a conservative talking point here. What do they mean by fatherlessness? So there's a couple of things you have to understand. There's fatherlessness that comes because a father dies, right? So a father dies in war. A father in wartime, a father dies because of health. Or we may call it untimely death, an accident, right? Or crime. In other words, it doesn't matter. The home is fatherless. It's fatherlessness. Okay. The biggest issue that they, of course, push is unwed fatherless. In other words, when you have a mother who gets pregnant, they're not married, they get pregnant. what is interesting to me is that what he never talks about is the sin behind unwed birth rates. You know, fornication or adultery. Never talks about that. That's interesting. Never talks about that. Now, the reason why that's important because people always talk about and champion how great, let's say, wed birth rates, married birth rates are among, let's say, white couples. Well, the problem with that is, again, how you frame stats. And this is where it gets kind of dicey because how you frame stats. Well, one, if you go into the black community and you say, here's the black community, and you say the black community is always labeled as if they were monolithic. So the unwed birth rates, 78% of black mothers are having babies without fathers. Then they attach without fathers. So then they say, then the child is fatherless. So that's a lot right there, right, to kind of jumble together. So working backwards, even if the mother is fatherless, the stats doesn't say that the child, or 78% of black children, do not have their fathers present in their lives. So that's one thing. The second thing is, if you say the unwed or 78% of black mothers, well, where are these? Are you talking about the entire black community? The reason why I say that is because when you look at certain stats and you say, okay, so if I'm counting suburban women, right? So if I'm counting suburban black women, if I'm counting suburban white women. Okay, so let's just say with married couples. So if I'm saying that excuse me. So if I'm saying that married white women or suburban women, it's going to be over 50%, right? Let's say married or suburban black women, they're going to tend to be married, let's say around 30%. So what I'm saying is, if you say, it depends on where you're taking the count, okay, where you're taking the count. So then there's areas where there's older couples, which then is not going to, they're going to have a lower birth rate count, okay? I'm not trying to complicate things. So the idea is that how you frame numbers is what I'm saying here. So Native Americans, which is pretty much rarely talked about, is almost the poor numbers across the scale with Native Americans. In other words, when you think about the Native Americans in terms of what, and then the land and all that kind of stuff that they've been given, 68% of Native Americans have I'll put it like this. Let me rephrase. Native Americans have a 68% unwed birth rate. Okay. If you go into rural right areas, they're going to have a higher unwed birth rate. My point is, there's always kinds of ways that you want to frame the numbers. Now, Larry will only talk about pretty much African Americans. Now, he's going to mention overall, because if you take the overall population of America, then the fatherless rate is 40-something%, okay, 44%, which is always interesting to me, right? So that means still the majority of America are not popping out unwed mothers. Okay, here we go.
40% of American kids now come into the world without a father in the home, married to the mother, and I attribute that.
Now that's an overall American, across the country, the American population. Now, if you say black mothers, it's much higher, 78%. Okay, which normally he spews out.
To the welfare state. We've incentivized women to marry the government and incentivized men to abandon their financial and moral responsibility. I also
Okay, let's talk about that. When he talks about the welfare state, he's blaming the fatherless on the welfare state. That's just simply not true. The the number of people who are on welfare, first of all, when you talk about welfare and you say the people who are receiving, the initial, because he's going to kind of say something, we incentivize. No, we don't. The welfare state or welfare food stamps are designed for poor people, not for working people. In other words, the majority of people are not on welfare. Now, if you're on welfare, to qualify, you have to be poor. Now, he oftentimes will kind of miscite Lyndon Johnson's Great Society or the policies of Lyndon Johnson's back during the 60s. And they'll make it seem like these policies were designed for black people. They weren't. They were designed to help the poor. Now, black people fit into that category. And then what happened was the way they administrated these policies devastated black communities or welfare recipients in those communities. It wasn't all of the black community. In other words, the black community, like every other community, has always been multi-level. Poor, blue collar, middle class, upper middle class, and wealthy. Then you can say blue collar, professional, workers, lawyers, doctors, business owners. There's always been. So again, the way you craft the numbers, slight the numbers, is how you can say, oh, this community is worse off than that community. Here we go.
I'm going to give a full-throated denunciation of that narrative that the Democrats push all the time, that America is systemically racist. It is a lie. It's causing us to pit against each other. It's critical race theory, this reparation stuff, all stems from this notion that America remains systemically racist. Police.
Okay, so one other thing. Okay, so let's look at this. He says the systematic racism. Again, another way of how do you define what's called systematic racism? And oftentimes you will hear black people saying that America is still racist or systematic racist. So the question is America, if you use the term America, so then you got to say America as a nation, America as its laws. Now, everyone would agree America was racist. America was systematically racist, okay? And so as of 1965, America is no longer constitutionally, legally racist. So the question becomes, where does the systematic racism come in at? It's not systematic from the standpoint of structure or laws. But did hearts change? Did people's hearts and minds change in 1965? Well, the answer is no. So what happens is that if you have a police officer, if you have a judge, like think about the picture of the Charlotte marchers. Remember those guys that President Trump said there was very fine people on both sides, right? Well, if you look at the picture, remember the picture of the guys who were marching through Charlottesville, Virginia, with tiki torches, right? Shouting, "The Jews will not replace us." They were younger guys, like late 20s, 30s, late 30s, like that, around there, okay? Now, what's also interesting about those guys, remember, they were hiring managers. They were blue-collar workers. They were middle-class workers, professional workers. But understand this. These same guys, imagine now that one of those guys is a hiring manager. So now what is he going to do? He's going to use this system. Not legally, because it's illegal to be racist. It's illegal to apply racist practices in hiring, policing, anything else. But if you're a racist, how do you get around that? That's what people mean by systematic racism. Unfortunately, on the left, they have poor They have poor marketing, right? Poor branding, like defund the police. I understand what they mean by defund the police, but the branding of it, the slogan was poor. So that's, and we talk about, so we take systematic racism. You look at now what the Republicans are doing to take out African American history, take out even history of America, to reshape it, to re-say, let's not talk about slavery and things like that. Okay, so you have people who are using the legal system, and because they're racist, now they use the system because they are in positions to be able to do that. That's what they mean by systematic racism. All right.
Are pulling back because they're being called racist. Crime is going up, and the people who are being hurt the most by that, by the police no longer engaging in proactive policing, are the very black and brown people that people on the left pretend to care about. The other thing is we must.
All right. So I want to talk about this part here, is which is most disgusting. When he says that policing, when he says that the police officers now are not, they're unable to do their jobs. Sleight of hand right here. They are unable to do their jobs because they get talked about, they get criticized, right? But what he just admitted was that, one, the police are cowards, that the police are derelict in their duties. If you're saying that they're pulling back, you're saying that the police are not doing the job that they swore an oath to do. So if a police officer is doing his job, and by the way, Black Lives Matter, um, the boogeyman CRT, which I'm not going to get into here because he's not defining CRT. It's just the boogeyman. Black Lives Matter, right? Again, the bait and switch. The Black Lives Matter movement was against police brutality. So what they switched and say, well, these are Marxist girls, lesbian girls who are seeking to destroy the nuclear family. No, they were aiming their protest and their march and their work against police brutality. Now, had they done right and they were their own worst enemies, yeah, maybe they might have gotten into some of these issues here. But that wasn't the primary issue of Black Lives Matter. The idea that police officers were getting away with shooting unarmed people. The police were out of control. Okay, so if the police cannot do their job, in other words, if they're mad because people are watching them, people are holding them accountable, if you're telling me that that's why you're mad, that's why you are not going to do your job, then they should be fired. And let's get police officers in there who will do their jobs according to the law. So the police officers that are complaining that it's rough to be a cop are the dirty cops. Let's purge those officers out and get good officers in. I will go a step further and challenge. What police department / police officers are getting criticized, protest against when they're doing their job? It's the bad ones. If a thug does a drive-by and killed a 4-year-old girl, and we've seen these stories, who's protesting for that guy? See, again, the sleight of hand is to shift attention away. No one is going to come against good police officers. See, good police officers that are doing their job, it doesn't happen. So this is what I'm saying, that the sleight of hand, that these Republican talking points, and which, by the way, which Republicans should take an inventory on. They used to call it autopsy, but they should say, let's take a look at some of our stands. Now, Larry has made his living, and it was a good living, on the sleight of hand of numbers, okay? The sleight of hand of numbers, the sleight of hand of stats, crafting something that, he thinks he can win off of that platform. He's not even making a dent, and that's the sad story, the sad truth about Larry Elders, okay? Because people are not turning out to vote for him. But beyond that, we can see how this sleight of hand here is, you can see how he crafts his argument by not giving you all the facts, all the truth. Okay. All right, guys, that's my perspective. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought, a comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. Till next time, I'll see you then.